Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Very, very happy to have been wrong. That's what I want to say to all of my people who follow me, man. I'm sure you've seen me be right a couple of times. This time you got a chance to see me be terribly wrong. I said the trade deadline was not going to be very eventful, that the collective bargaining agreement was going to keep things from happening. And based on the logic I was looking at, I thought there was a good chance that was going to be the case, but we got the opposite. What we got is a very, very active trade deadline. And a lot of movement, several big names. The biggest name we've ever seen moved in a trade deadline coming to the Lakers and Luka Doncic. But you saw a lot of other moves that were big as well. Jimmy Butler going to Warriors, Brandon Ingram going to Toronto, Kyle Kuzma going to the Bucks. It's a lot of stuff happened. De'Aaron Fox went to San Antonio. Zach LaVine ended up in Sacramento. So much has happened. In fact, right now, there's still some details that I don't have on what happened with Marcus Smart. Did he go to the Wizards? Did he land there? Did he land somewhere else? Did Malcolm Brogdon end up going back to Memphis? You know, I don't know if that was what it looked like it was going to be. It looked like, based on the numbers, that Malcolm was likely headed back to Memphis, but that confirmation didn't come before I left the house. So I'm still in the dark about some of the stuff that went down. But, you know, this was one of those times where I was just the opposite of what I thought was going to happen took place. What you saw was teams more likely to make moves to structure themselves in a position to be able to manage the collective bargaining agreement going forward, I believe. Getting pieces they believed in, getting contracts they needed off their books, positioning themselves financially to be able to make rebuilds happen in the future. You saw that with teams like the Hawks. The Hawks, nothing that they did, in my opinion, was structured around them winning right now. What it did was put them in a position to have the good expiring contracts they need and to be able to find themselves beneath the apron. So it required more moves to put teams in positions to be under that apron. And that's what they actually ended up reacting to, was the presence of this new collective bargaining agreement, making it so that it would be wise for them to have things they believe in on their books and get things off of those books that they ultimately did not. So yeah, that's what it actually ended up being. Not a lack of movement, but more movement. And, you know, you just got to appreciate that for the fan base. The NBA fan base, just seeing so many new players in uniform, big names going all over the place, shifts in the conference. Some stuff we thought might happen didn't happen, but some things that we weren't ready for that were massive did. And, you know, I really like the moves that were made from my Laker team. As somebody who could just consider what urgency is needed for our timeline, I thought we met that urgency today, or this past week. Bringing in Luka Doncic and then shifting toward being willing to go all in with our picks. I don't think we thought a rebuild with Anthony Davis was best for mortgaging in our entire future. With the picks that we had left on the books, coupled with the idea that we only had a few of them, maybe with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, the Lakers probably felt you could get away with not mortgaging your future. It would probably be in your best interest to be able to keep some gunpowder, so to speak, to be able to pull the trigger on moves in the future that would bring pieces to the Lakers. You had Anthony Davis, so investing in a center didn't make as much sense to our front office. But when you move on from Anthony Davis, putting a big investment into a center made all the sense in the world. So that's why I think the Lakers made the move for Mark Williams after the Doncic trade, as opposed to making the move while Anthony was here. Because the presence of Anthony made it so that we were already putting a massive amount of money into our center position. And doubling down on that meant that we didn't have other things like ball handlers and stuff like that. Luka Doncic comes in and gives us immediately strength in our ball handling situation with LeBron James and Austin Reeves, but now leads us in a space where we would need to address our center position in a real way. So by the way of the logic, now you must invest in a good center. You can't just get away with Jackson Hayes and, you know, Koloko and the young guy that we just picked up on the two-way, Jemison. So I like the logic that the Lakers engaged in, and I agreed with it. Would I have liked to walk away with this trade deadline having a little bit of another pick swap from which it's tradable or something like that? I think so. I would have preferred to not spend so much on addressing Mark Williams, especially since his injury history is as it is. But I also preferred to overpay for our center than to leave ourselves with Jackson Hayes and tell Luka Doncic, well, that's it, man. We're going to just kind of punt the rest of the season and we'll start building around you tomorrow. That I just don't think that's the right message to send to a guy who's already unhappy, who already wants to beat the hell out of a team. And we seen, I was watching highlights of Luka yesterday. I spent some of my day yesterday just studying on the Luka Doncic. And last year when he went to Atlanta, dropped 72 or 73 points on them, you understand what his mentality is when he goes up against a team that he has wrath toward. They traded him on draft night, Trae Young. So he went in there with a certain vitriol and made them pay in a historical way. When you got a player like that coming in with a chip on his shoulder, you got that data telling you, hey, this is how he acts when he has a chip on his shoulder. You think that you can win a championship this year. You think you can win a championship this year based on that and the fact that you got LeBron James in place and the fact that you got Austin Reeves in place developing nicely, basically playing all-star ball on a half a contract. And then you bring in Mark Williams on a half a contract. He's making like $9 million a year, playing like an all-star center over the last, say, 12 games. It's like, well, we bring ourselves this lob threat that Luka clearly thrives with. We saw how he looked with Christian Wood 3 years ago as the center. No rim protection. They couldn't do anything, even with Luka playing great. You look at the urgency of LeBron James' timeline and how you still want to honor him and take advantage of the fact that he's still playing at an all-star level. And taking care of him sends a certain message to Luka that we take care of our stars, even when we have someone coming in with a higher priority, so to speak. We still respect your timeline, LeBron. That sends a message to Luka that we can do the same thing with him in the future. So I thought it was the right thing for the Lakers to send that message, get that centerpiece, make sure that his timeline aligns with the young player that we just brought in, considering the fact that Mark Williams is 23 years of age, Luka is 25 years of age. It makes all the sense in the world to align them with that same timeline. And when you move forward, you consider LeBron James is 40 years old, but playing faster than both of them. And the efficiency of those players, for which I did a little homework on Mark Williams last night and found out just how efficient he is on both sides of the floor. Not great at the rim protection per se, but all the things surrounding defense and offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding, he's really good at. He's a good steals player, and he has the longest standing reach in the NBA. 9'9" standing reach. That's longer than Wembanyama at 9'7" standing reach. So when you consider this, you look at his price tag, he's only making $9 million. You look at the injury history and you have a little cause for pause, but then you realize that he's been on a bad team that wants you to sit for 2 months for rolling an ankle so they can continue tanking. The only reason why the Charlotte Hornets even moving on from this kid is because they feel like he's probably been playing too well for them to tank properly while he's on the team. And they could use the draft picks, given the fact that it's Charlotte and it's hard to get anybody to stay there or come there. So it makes all the sense in the world for them to sell high on him while he's playing well, given the fact they've been dealing with his injury history. You know what I mean? They're not going anywhere as a franchise. He probably won't resign with them. They probably ain't going to want to pay him that now that he's making this huge jump in his production. It's like, all of that made sense for Mitch Kupchak and the Charlotte Hornets to move on from Mark Williams, and we get him at a discount per year for the next 2 years that allows for us to be able to do even more. We create a roster spot in that process by moving on from Cam Reddish and Dalton Knecht, a young player who's actually older than Mark Williams, who we're bringing back. Since we drafted Dalton Knecht to be a win now, help us now rather rookie, and isn't playing up to that level, he looked like he's still going to have to be developed just like a 20-year-old rookie. And we don't really want any projects on our situation based on our circumstances. So it's like all of this just made sense to me. And I understand people who don't want us to overspend for an injury-prone center. But I also understand people who are saying, yo, look at what he's done over the last month. And work that into your equation as what you project he's going to do going forward. And you consider he's healed from his back. And some of the other injuries didn't require any surgery. He's 23 years of age. You need a center more than anything in the world. Your defense ain't going to be that great with Dalton Knecht. Those picks are likely not going to be as good because now you have Luka Doncic at 25 coming in. He'll be 31 at that point. If you do what you're supposed to do, you have him. If you don't, you have the right to trade him and get the picks back that ultimately you're losing in this situation, since he's worth twice as much as what you paid for him for anyway. So it's like, I don't see a path to us not being able to get young talent in our situation if for some reason we need to. Because you could take Luka Doncic, Mark Williams, of whom you both got at a discount based on what it is you project them to be, and trade them at a higher price tag than what you paid for, if you have to reset. So that's why I don't mind bringing in Mark Williams at this price, because the way he's playing right now over the last month has shown me that this is actually a discount if he keeps this up. And given the fact that he's so young, his injury history isn't really a good barometer of what it is you project he potentially be, because it's not like he's some worn down 27, 28-year-old who's been showing us 7, 8 years of this. It's been 2 years since he was drafted. This is his 3rd year and he's playing like an all-star, which leaves him above the curve when you consider it takes about 4 to 6 years for players to develop, especially if they have injury issues. So you consider that barometer, which I subscribe to, and you realize he's above the curve sooner, having played less ball but playing at a high level. And then you look at the advanced numbers, and they tell you he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the game, one of the most efficient field goal scorers in the game, one of the better ball handling centers in the game, based on the small sample size of the minutes given that ultimately you're going to give him in this situation. Makes sense. All of that makes sense. Is there a risk? Sure. Because he could tumble forward having the injury issues that he could have. But he's in a winning situation. He's in the midst of playing the best ball of his career. He's not worn down. He's only 23 years old, one of the youngest players we got on our team currently. And he's ahead of the curve as it pertains to his development. Despite so little basketball being played, he's already playing at this high of a level. That makes all the sense in the world to go after a guy like this. And maybe overpay for him, because you know it's an overpay based on what he's shown, but not an overpay based on what you're about to show. He's about to show you in your uniform. And so that's really what it comes down to. I'm of the mindset that you keep this kid for 3 years. You give him 35 minutes a night. He plays 65 games a season. And if you want to retrade him, you could potentially trade him for 3 or 4 picks. And whatever salary matches, because of course you're going to want to resign him at a much higher rate. But for now, you could go after a championship or 2 while he's on this contract, while you got LeBron James in place. So this is an overpay that makes sense to me. The risk is in place, but I think a lot of people who are worried about the risk don't know of what he's been doing for the last month. They look at Mark Williams as the injury-prone 45-game-a-season guy, but that's like 2 seasons. That's 2 single sample size. They don't see what he did in this month of January. And that's what I'm focusing on as a means of the price tag. Not to mention that Mitch Kupchak understands your situation, Lakers. So he understands how important it is for you to create a roster spot in this situation, take on Cam Reddish. So part of why you gave up so much is not only because of what you're taking back in Mark Williams, but because he had to take back Cam Reddish. So that's, and it creates a roster spot for you for which you, again, desperately need to fill out your roster spot. Now, one thing I wish the Lakers could have done was move on from Maxi Kleber, but I knew it was a good chance we couldn't, because he's an injury player. He's injured for the next 2 months rather. And you can only trade him for a player that's making just shy of what he's making. So what that means is you're likely going to bring back multi-year contract on something no good. Because if they're willing to take back a player that's hurt, they're going to want you to take back something even worse. And some of the players that we would have wanted didn't allow for us to aggregate those salaries, or you would have likely had to throw in some draft compensation to make it make sense to anybody to take them. And you gave away all of your draft compensation in these trades that you've made. So it's like that wasn't as likely as maybe we would hope it would have been. And if we were to take something back, it probably would have been terrible anyway on multi-year deals. you probably do better just holding on to Max Kleber, just live with that. And so I think that was the lesser of the two evils for the Lakers. I think that's what they're looking at. I'm sure they would have loved to move on from Maxey, but it just didn't seem really possible based on those understandings. And so that's what we're doing. We're moving forward. I don't know if he'll be back by the end of the season. It's looking like that foot is going to be out. He's going to be out for another 8 weeks. And in the event that the Lakers allow for him to just heal, maybe he'll be back for the playoffs, for which we know he's played with Luka Doncic for the last 5 years. The chemistry's there. So if we can get him in the right conditioning after healing up from that foot, he may prove to be a decent role player for our team in the playoffs with continuity of having played with several players on this roster. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the Maxi Kleber thing. That's best case scenario. I think we probably hold him out for the rest of the season. But at least it helps with the chemistry of Luka Doncic getting incorporated into the space, for which we know he's probably not that comfortable in, given the fact that he is here in duress and being traded away like a thief in the night. So that's really what it is. The more friends he has here, probably the better for him. And there are several, including our coach, JJ, that played with him for a little while, Dorian Finney-Smith, Christian Wood, Markieff, Bron, people that Luka knows pretty well. I think it'll help him kind of get incorporated into the situation. So that's what it is, man. That's my take on the Lakers situation with Mark Williams. I'm sorry to see Max Christie go. I'm sorry to see Dalton Knecht go. I appreciated Cam Reddish services. He did some good things here. I never saw a world where we would actually trade Max Christie and Dalton Knecht. In fact, those were two untouchable pieces for me that were essential to the Lakers' future. But once the Lakers picked up Luka Doncic, your needs change. You don't have the same needs anymore. And most importantly, you accentuate your weaknesses on the defensive end now that you have him as one of your centerpieces. Anthony Davis goes out. Now it hurts more to have Dalton Knecht on the team with Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura being negative defenders. That's not a good thing for your roster as much anymore, especially for the future for which these guys are supposed to represent. And so what you want is to kind of give yourself a bit more defensive presence, rim protection, for which you're extremely weak in naturally, accounting for Anthony Davis, who's now gone. So it was more important that we got Dalton Knecht out of here for a guy like Mark Williams for the future of our situation. And it makes it sweet that Mark Williams is, in fact, younger than Dalton Knecht. So that made sense to me. Worst case scenario, Luka Doncic, we don't find a way to trade him. We test the free agent pool with him, and he signs with Denver. That's worst case scenario, as to which everything that we just did goes to hell. LeBron James retires, and we're a bad team with no picks and none coming. That's your worst case scenario. You gotta guard against that if you're the Lakers. You can't let that happen. Luka Doncic's either gonna have to sign this extension or we're gonna have to trade him. And that's kind of what this has done. If we would have kept our picks, as I mentioned in the previous video, then maybe you don't feel the urgency to move him if he refuses to sign an extension. But this leaves us in a path to being a bad team with no picks if he doesn't sign that extension after what we just did. Especially if Mark Williams has any sort of injury history problems going forward. Now you're really, really in a bad space with no path other than free agency to save you. LeBron retires. This is a nightmare if Luka doesn't sign with us. So that's the problem in front of us. But I'm of the mindset that Luka Doncic didn't necessarily not want to be in LA. It's that he's particularly wanted to be in Dallas. And if I'm banking on that, then he probably would like to stay anywhere that's going to be loyal to him. I don't think he had a preference other than Dallas, because I think he wanted to stay with Dallas his whole career. Now, would he like to play with Jokic in Denver? Maybe. Is Denver the greatest bet to be a better place for him to play than the Lakers going forward? I don't think so. Not based on their circumstances, some of the decisions they've been making. I think he's probably better here with us. I think we're more likely to get Jokic than Denver's likely to get Doncic. I think that. I don't particularly think Jokic would want to play with the Lakers per se. He probably wants to play with one team his whole career. So that's something we could consider. But I just don't particularly think that they're in great hands in Denver. Not really. I would tell Luka Doncic, you're doing much better in LA, because look at what LeBron's been able to receive while being a Laker. All he had to do was just sit here. Good stuff came to him. Anthony Davis came to him. Luka Doncic came to him. All you got to do is sit here and something's coming to you. Denver, ask Jokic if that's the experience he's had. Just ask him. The only way that happens is if you come to him. Other than that, that's not how his life is going. So I don't doubt that the Lakers feel confident that they can get free agents, that people will still see this place as a place that if I go there, other people will come in with me. And so that's what we're banking on, that we can play free agency when LeBron retires. Somebody will come play with Luka and Mark Williams. And if they don't, then we cross that road by making trades, man. That's what I think the Lakers do. Now, the next thing I think I want the Lakers to kind of do is start the process, and this is day one of this process. Start the process of accumulating draft equity, draft picks for the distant future, 2036, 2037 second rounders. Do everything you can to put more draft equity on your team, because that's your out of circumstances. And mind you, we're at the beginning stage of this. This is gonna be a 10-year process for the Lakers, but you do want to start collecting draft equity now, because that's your currency. That's your currency in this situation that you're going to be in with Luka Doncic post LeBron. It allows you to bring players to you, undo mistakes. We know how that goes. We respect draft equity. We just needed to make this move. And we believe that the players that we picked up, we could trade for more than what we received. We traded them for, rather. We can get more back than what we gave up, is what I'm saying. So that's this logic behind getting Mark Williams and, of course, Luka to Don. Is so much more than that, but at the very least, that's what it can be. So I don't really worry about the Lakers' future. It's just what's represented in your situation. You may not have 8 and 9 picks, but are the players you have worth 8 and 9 picks? Of course. I do worry about the value of LeBron James, going into retirement, him not being able to net me anything when he leaves. But getting Luka Doncic at half the price will help some with that, to say the least, especially if he stays and continues to help us be a win team. You shouldn't have a problem getting a free agent in 2027 or 2026 or what have you. Somebody will come play. So that's what we're banking on, man. Luka makes people better. Centers can always feel good about being here. Athletes, leapers, they're always going to get the ball. Shooters, always going to get the ball. So if you're a player that needs to get the ball, you understand that you have great playmakers to come play with here with the 3 that we have. So maybe a guy want to take a discount. Maybe, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be in a space where it's so difficult to get people, because you have a centerpiece that's going to make people better. It's going to get people their looks and their spots and things like that. So that's really what I see there, man. I just think that this is a good piece to build around. Obviously, I think that's an understatement, but even more so kind of specific to what we're talking about. You just see him being somebody that people want to play with. And so that's what I have to say, man. That's really what it comes down to. I like what the Lakers did here. Trade deadline was a success for the franchise. I think that even though we overpaid for Mark Williams today, I think we can trade him for more tomorrow. I think that Luka Doncic obviously coming at a discount is manna from heaven. You got to love that. And we'll miss the guys that we gave up, but not nearly as much as we appreciate what's coming in. So that's what it's all about. BDL 44. I thank you all for watching. Salute the Kobe Minute. I'm out.